Here we go. And it's episode 432.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's episode number 432. And we're going to get a little bit grims on you today because our subject is we are going to talk about storytelling. And it's one of my favorite subjects. It's such an interesting topic. But before we get into any of those interesting topics, John, I wonder if you'd do me the courtesy of introducing yourself to the audience.
Yeah, but before that, Rob, I got asked the obvious question, grim or fairy tales. Mm-hmm. What character would I be then, Rob?
Oh, my goodness. One of the many lost kings, perhaps?
Oh, I'll take that. So I'm the... You're the dragon. You like that, listener. If you're just listening to this, folks, you like that. So I'm the joint founder of mail-right.com, where we build beautiful websites, plus we provide a CRM, landing pages, email and text message sequences, and a lot more. Back over to you, Rob.
And of course, as an inbound marketer that focuses on SEO, I actually identify with, and my company identifies with, being storytellers. So it's in all of our literature. It's on our homepage of our website. But really, it's like storytelling with technical expertise, because you have to know how Google wants to see the story, and you have to adjust your story to address specific questions that people have through Google. So it's not directly storytelling. It's not just making up a yarn and going for it. But anyway, it's central. Telling a good story is central into the success of being online and being an inbound marketer. It's central to all of it. Your ability to riff and make a boring subject interesting, which is usually done through storytelling, or things like that. Like, it's all coming back to storytelling. So anyway, if you'd like to hear more about what I have to say about storytelling, go to inboundrem.com. I have lots of posts that talk about, in various ways, the idea behind writing a story, telling a story with keywords, telling a story about real estate, telling a story about many different things. Anyway, without any further ado, let's just leap right into it. John, why don't you go ahead and share, I don't know, maybe a favorite idea of how story played into either your company or another company you do business with, or a story that you've seen online that just was memorable to you, something that somebody created. How do you view your receptivity to storytelling online?
Yeah, I think it's been influenced by two individuals. One of them, I gave a link in the show notes for Rob, and that's Professor Scott Galloway. He's well known as a brand expert. He does a fantastic podcast called Prophecy, and he does a really good newsletter. And on Fridays, he does a monologue, which is actually read out by a professional actor. Mm-hmm. And one of these monologues he calls Tell Me the Story. And it really clarifies what his own thoughts, because he's been very successful. He's had his ups and downs, but he's been very successful in his business career. But he says one of his superpowers is storytelling. Mm-hmm. And another person that really influenced me is Rob from Startups for the Rest of Us, another great podcast. And Rob's a personal friend of mine, and he's a multi-millionaire. He built up a email drip marketing company called Drip and sold it a few years ago for a huge amount of money. And he does a great podcast. And one of his great skills, I feel, is storytelling. and how important storytelling is in startups, bootstrap startups, and how it's important in, I think, storytelling and custom market fit are the two biggest things that every startup, and getting this product fit with the customers that can be utilizing it. And I think that applies to real estate agents, because I think if you've got a message that really resonates with a audience that's really there, and you get the message correct, there's something magical about that, and something that anything else can't match. But so many real estate agents and so many bootstrap startups don't have this linkage between message and target, if you know what I mean, Robert.
Mm-hmm. Those are some interesting podcasts. I'm going to have to perhaps check one or two of them out. I think you consume more podcast stuff than I do. I actually listen to very few podcasts. Currently, I just bought for the very first time in a long time somebody else's course, a guy by the name of Ryan Stewart, who is an SEO guy. And so far, I've got to say, he used storytelling to reel me in to buy his courses in the first place. And his storytelling was small and simple, but storytelling falls into categories. And if all of you who are listening to the show haven't done this already, I strongly recommend that everybody read Jung and look deeply into his messaging as it relates to archetype. Because Jung was the very first person to ever say the following: most stories are based around the hero's journey. And he was correct. Because the hero's journey is an idea that has been around since, as far as we can tell, since there was language. Like, it's painted on cave walls. And the idea is a protagonist is like under duress, has a hard life, a hard time, barely survives. And this protagonist runs through any number of different challenges, such as the Odyssey is a great hero's journey. And then at the end, achieves something notable or great. And the thing that's interesting about this is that when Jung was doing the study, we all resonate with that story. It's almost hardwired into our brains. Your job is to tell that story in a compelling way, but the idea of the story, the general outline of the story, is actually already done for you if you read Jung. You can also really flesh out a lot of characters in the story if you understand archetypes. We all have an archetype, and it's automatic. Everybody is placing everybody else into categories: smart guy, dumb guy, strong guy, teacher, maiden. And there's many archetypes, but the archetypes are universal. They're not related to a culture or a particular thing. They're universal, which is what makes social media so interesting, is that we are automatically characterizing people, and people are automatically putting themselves into the archetype. Maiden is very popular on social media in terms of archetypes because it's young, attractive young women with a message, but they're fitting into an archetype that is inside of all of our brains. There's another archetype, princess, and there's another archetype, queen, and there's another archetype. Do you see what I'm saying, where I'm going with this? There's all these different archetypes, and if you decide to fit yourself into one of them, or king, hero, teacher, professor, one of those archetypes generally helps you tell a story. So you've got the storyteller who's sitting in an archetype role, and then you've got the story that you're telling, which is full of archetypes. And you make sure that they're understandable, straightforward, and relatable to other people. And then you take everybody through a hero's journey, which is when I started off at my desk with just a virtual assistant. These are the various challenges that we had to overcome. Challenge 1, challenge 2, challenge 3, challenge 4. And that's basically storytelling 101. One of the fascinating things about selling things, guys, everybody that's listening to the show, real estate, anything, we can sell anything if we can make the idea digestible and relatable. Anything. You go and you look at a house and you need to tell a story about it. Understanding the fundamentals of storytelling, which is really done very well through the eyes of a psychotherapist, is fundamental to whether or not you find it easy or hard to get up in front of a camera and in 5 minutes or less say something interesting about the house. Because the first thing you need to understand is your message needs to be relatable to the average man. And if you don't know how the average man thinks or the average woman, you're probably in trouble in terms of your storytelling. So telling a story as it relates to a piece of property is, I don't know, is incredibly relevant. And telling the story the way that I tell stories, John, or anybody else who's listening to the show, is I usually do a bit of research to make sure that if I was doing houses, I don't care if like my bungalow, okay, it was owned by an Italian entrepreneur before me, okay, and it was, he raised 3 kids here, and I actually know their names. And so, those children, one went to jail and unfortunately died inside. And the other 2 children are still living with their parents. And it's a nuclear version of an Italian family, and they all speak Italian, even though the kids were raised here. It's kind of fascinating in a way. The husband, the guy who owned the house, is a machinist. And he was a machinist for a very long time, eking out what would be called a shop steward role, which is a very low income role where you machine little parts. And then, because he was affable and friendly, he met somebody in the movie business who said that there was a very hard piece to make for mobile gimbals. And Frank, the guy that lived here, said, "Oh, I can make those." And so he started making these mobile gimbals and turned it into a business, which has allowed him to buy quite a few properties, not just this one. He's made a lot of money making little machine gimbals. And he owned this house prior to me. Now, that is how you tell a story. You break it down to the ridiculous. You find the interesting points, but how do you know that they're interesting? Well, I just told you a micro version of a hero's journey. He was a shop steward, didn't make very much money, an immigrant that didn't speak a lot of English, still doesn't speak a lot of English, to be honest with you. And yet he managed to make himself a big success. It's a very encapsulated version of a hero's journey. That's my thoughts on storytelling, John. I mean, there is so much more that can be said about the subject in general. But when you understand what storytelling does, when you understand that it can move people emotionally, like the whole of all of our religions is based on storytelling. And it doesn't matter which one you talk about. It doesn't matter if you're listening to the show, what part of your spiritual religious journey. At some point, somebody told you a story. Maybe it was in church. Maybe it was early in your life. Maybe it was later in your life. Something about that story resonated with you and it created in you a wellspring of faith. But it started with storytelling. It's nurtured with storytelling. Storytelling, in my opinion, is probably the most important skill that an entrepreneur, well, it's up there. Maybe not the most important. It's certainly top 3 without a question. Top 3 skills for a salesperson, top 3 skills for an entrepreneur, top 3 skills if you decide, hey, storytelling in parenthood is strong. Imagine the impact that you're having on your children, because another thing that storytelling does is it allows us to absorb knowledge. Do you know why that is, John?
No, but you're going to tell me.
Well, it's a fascinating thing. I'm neurodivergent. A lot of people are, about 30% of population is neurodivergent. And guess what? We can't listen to information. We can't absorb it. We can't focus on it unless somebody is actually doing a job on engaging our conscious intellect. And it has to be very engaging. So if you don't tell us a piece, like if you just say, here's a textbook, here's the history of Edinburgh, and it's written in 1942, Edinburgh was founded. In 1955, Edinburgh was attacked. In 1965, Edinburgh incorporated itself. ADHD people can't fucking do diddly squat with that. But what they can do is if somebody tells them a compelling story about Edinburgh, we'll probably never forget it. I visited Edinburgh on such and such. The Black Watch was there. They were dressed in these amazing outfits. And it was really funny because I walked up to the, do you see what I'm saying? You couch it in a parable or a story. And ADHD people can absorb the knowledge probably better and faster than traditional neurotypical people. Anyway, storytelling, in my opinion, is one of the most important things. Now, we're going to go to a break here, folks. And when we come back, John is going to kick us off into the actual mechanics of starting to become a good storyteller. I gave some thoughts, I gave some opinions, but we're going to move into some scientifically proven methods that you, the average person, can use to become a better storyteller. All right, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 432. We have been talking about storytelling as a mechanism of propelling your digital marketing for your real estate business. John is going to start us off. He has created an incredibly good list of some tips, tricks, and tactics on becoming a better storyteller. So, John, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, storytelling and also skills that will complement your storytelling ability. And I agree with what you outlined at the end of the first half. I think storytelling, if you're going to be an effective agent and still have a career, is going to be one of the top skills that you're going to need in the next couple of years. And it's a skill that I see a lot of agents failing on. And the good news is I think with some being aware of it and practicing and getting in front of the camera and just talking to people and honing this, you can improve it dramatically. You don't have to be a born star to become pretty effective at it. It just needs conscious effort and practice. So number one, becoming knowledgeable. And I think that does really help with your storytelling is a skill, because I think you've talked about this, being knowledgeable about the area that you're selling property in, knowing about the different type of properties. I think it's something that over the episodes you've mentioned multiple times, Robert. And I think it's definitely a skill that the more professional and those that really want a long-term career in real estate, they really foster, don't they?
I do think that. And my comment about being knowledgeable is literally, no joke, John, beyond the idea of basic sales skills, like learning from masters like Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, and learning what a close is and learning how that works, and Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy, and I could go on and on. There are some basic books that I read over and over again. But once I understood sales, there was one thing that you do differently, no matter what sales job you go into, no matter what, it's always, do you really understand the product? Do you really understand the subject? When somebody comes to you, the reason that we all get frustrated with salespeople is that the amount of times I've walked onto someplace that's selling a product, and then I have done maybe a very cursory amount of research, let's call it a day or two's worth, and I walk on to a car lot, let's say, and then I ask a question about a car to the guy that's circling the lot, and he can't answer it. That's it. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to buy anything from that car dealership. I'm not going to buy anything from that salesperson. I'm done. If I know more than you with 2 days of research and you can't answer a question or come up with an answer for me super fast, yeah, I'm done. So, and it's pretty dramatic with me. Like, I'll walk off the lot. Like, thank you, bye. Like, it's so ridiculous to me. It's like, how can you have a career or profession that you are claiming to be, the word professional is indicative of some kind of enhanced knowledge or skills or ability. That is certainly what people expect with real estate agents. Take away the car lot analogy. I've talked to lots of people, and hundreds, if not thousands, directly one-to-one. And when I talk to my friends, John, and I say, what do you expect out of a real estate agent? My friend's answer is somewhat universal. And it's just like, oh my God, they're making so much money these days. They better know every single detail of all 500 pages of the contracts, or else why am I hiring them? Like, what's the point? Like, so if you're an agent, you don't know what is on the 500 pages of the average real estate transaction. I'm going to ask you, well, what are you doing? Like, you got to, and the knowledge is, you take that 500 pages that you read painfully, because it would be hard and painful for me. And then you go, and now that I've read it and I do understand the details, I get to take all that away, break it down to the ridiculous, another strategy, a storytelling strategy. And then I get to, which is just make it very simple, very, very simple. And then you take a very complicated document and say, these are the top 5 things that are getting done in this document. And I need you to sign here, here, and here, which makes people feel comfortable and confident in probably signing the paperwork for one of the most important transactions of their entire lifetime. Certainly in California and the coastal states, where we're moving less. It's once every 12 years now instead of once every 5. Home, like, most people are locked out of the home market. Most first-time buyers can't buy. So, yeah, John, it's probably kind of a long riff on being knowledgeable, but yes, it is. When I train people for sales teams, and I've trained many, many thousands of them, what I am always focused on first and number one is, how well do you know the product or service? And if they don't know it, I start to teach it and train it, and I hammer away at it. I want every salesperson that works with me to understand every detail of what the service is, what it's supposed to do. Can't guarantee it's going to do it that way, but you can guarantee that you understand how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Number 2, narrow down your niche. Well, we've consistently talked about that in previous episodes, and it helps you be with your storytelling, because you know more. Obviously when you're starting your career, you have to be a journalist, but hopefully as you get on your feet and you progress, the more you can find a particular area, geography, type of clientele, doesn't really matter. But finding a niche that you kind of attracted to, the easier the storytelling and the selling process and being effective becomes, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Right. So focus on accountability. Not totally, but I think it's one of the factors that will make the storytelling true storytelling that's effective, rather than just flannel. Because there's a lot of people that are quite good at flannel, but it's been an effective storytelling, and being effective, it's the accountability part that kind of fits into that.
Accountability, as you intended it for this subject, accountability, do you mean make sure that everything that you're saying is accurate? Is that?
Yeah, and you do the things you say you're going to do.
Got you. I do think accountability in terms of storytelling, I think that accountability, like I personally am not like, I don't like 100% accountability in my storytelling because I tend to exaggerate for the sake of the story every once in a while. And that's tricky because people might think that you're lying. So I try not to exaggerate about hard facts like numbers, statistics. But, and when I do exaggerate, I can feel myself getting excited, and I've done it here many times on the show. I tend to go, this is just my
Well,
opinion.
there's no chance of that because I'm English for me, is there? There's been no excitement for me, is there?
No, you're more about sarcasm. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking, everybody. Just joking. All right. But when I'm doing the in my opinion, that kind of takes the weight off. I know this for a fact. You're not saying that really. Or take this with a grain of salt is something I use a lot of times, which is when I know I'm just kind of riffing on numbers. Now I may have a general knowledge. I usually do. Like I have a lot of background knowledge. I read a lot, just like you do, John. I don't listen to as many podcasts as you do, but I read a crap ton. And you like, so I don't remember where all my knowledge comes from though. That's the problem. I don't remember where I got the idea or the facts. So when those things happen, I go, well, I'll take it for a grain of salt, but I'm not sure where this came from. So accountability in terms of just being accurate in your communication is something that's how I would interpret accountability and apply accountability to storytelling. Just make sure that if you don't know a thing for sure, that you say that. Like just say it.
Yeah, there's no, and then normally there isn't a big problem about it. The big problem is not saying that, isn't it? But a lot of people are frightened to actually do that. On to the next one.
Mhm.
Learn to delegate. It's more of the skills that added on to storytelling, because I think when you get to a certain level of business, the quicker you can delegate and do it in an effective way, because there's a lot of people that when it comes to intelligence, they're quite capable of managing a team, but they are micromanagers to the extreme, and they're incapable of doing it because they micromanage to death. It's finding a happy medium, isn't it?
Yes. Delegating is probably, fascinatingly enough, in terms of telling a good story, it is literally one of the things on this list that I actually looked at with the most importance. Okay. For everybody listening and watching the show, I delegate to a ridiculous degree. I delegate my storytelling. I delegate everything. About the only thing I still do personally is record videos like this. And I record a couple private ones for my team, and I record public ones for the world at large. And then I let my team riff off it. They create blog posts. Like I've got a world-class content writer that took me many years to acquire. And when I did get him, it's still one of the greatest pieces of my business. He is incredibly good at taking the heart of my message and converting it into content that matches on the website. Now, we've worked together now for years, and we talk together frequently. So it doesn't happen in a vacuum. But at the same time, being able to delegate and understand that my message, the way that I like to communicate it, which, believe it or not, is like, I'm not worried about efficiency in terms of like creating leads. That's not my objective. My objective is efficiency of storytelling, impact emotionally, making sure that my message is heard. I let the sales bit do its job, do its job on its own these days. I just don't really focus on it at all. I just let my guy get the message right. What are we trying to do? We're trying to teach, real estate agents how important it is to have at least one marketing strategy that's not dependent upon some big company, or some huge conglomerate, a boomtown, a sink, something like that. Have something somewhere that's more independent, stuff like that. And why? That message is delivered from me, at least, from the fact that I'm an alcoholic in recovery, the fact that this is my 7th gosh darn business. Like, there is so many things that go into that message, and delegating allows you, like I think like 4 writers that touch my corporate blog. I have an image guy. I have the WordPress mechanics guy. I have who installs the clever little bits into the blog, because neither me nor my main writer do it. And what that means, John, is that I get to employ a really insanely overqualified writer for inbound REM, because I let him write the way he likes to write. In other words, he doesn't have to do a lot. He writes the piece, and then all these other people do the little tasks he finds annoying for him. So it's a massive, prolific effort of delegation that everybody kind of enjoys in order to get this piece of content done at a really high level. And so delegation is critical, in my opinion, to multimedia storytelling. I love the fact that you put it on the list. Delegation is so important. You're going to have people optimize your videos, as an example. You're going to have people rewrite or edit your content, as an example, add images, as an example. Delegation. Would you agree with that, John? Because I think, if I remember correctly, you delegate a lot inside your writing process, or am I misremembering?
I do a fair bit, but I also produce a lot of it now myself. But I do a lot of video and a lot of podcasting, as you know. So I'm kind of hammering away at it in all levels. On to the next one. Automate all you can. So two, in my opinion, and I'd be interested to see what Rob thinks. It's a bit of a two-edged sword, because automating stuff that can be is a great idea, but you can also overdo it. And in the real estate industry, there's a lot of vendors and a lot of so-called gurus that really push automate and automation to such a level that it's ridiculous. But then there's other people that poo-poo it totally and say it's a one-to-one business, and just you need to just get on the phone and do those calls. They don't point out, like, I'm sure Rob's the same as me. I've only got a mobile, and if somebody rings up and they're not on my list and they don't leave a voice message, they're not getting a call back. Never. And I would say a higher and higher percentage of the population is like that. Obviously, you could say at a lower, higher age level that mythology could still be effective. I don't know. I imagine there might be some credence in that particular argument. So I believe in automation. I use a fair bit myself, but I think you've got to be aware that there's definitely a level where it isn't beneficial. Over to you, Rob.
So I just did a little video not so long ago where I finally broke down and discussed AI. I did a review of ChatGPT-4 for realtors. And I've got a lot of team members, and we fall all over the spectrum with AI. For certain pages, we really use a lot of it, automate the process, like neighborhood pages and things like that. And the places that we dive deep on those pages to make sure that, number one, they're useful to the audience, and number two, that we don't get dinged by Google, is we have these 5 real estate facts. The 5 facts, I absolutely do not allow anybody on my team ever to use AI. They have to always manually research those 5 facts. And we can automate about 50% of the writing process. What I do love ChatGPT for is, and I think you're the one who pointed this out to me, if I remember correctly, I can copy and paste like a big blog, or I can take a couple of headers and put it in there and say, write a blog around this, and it does, and it extrapolates other headers. Titles and headers, as an ADHD person, I actually don't want to use usually what I see written. I never want to use it. So for me, it's not a cheat code, but the way that my brain works is I look at what somebody else gave me and I go, oh, I can do better than that. And instantaneously the answer of what is better to me comes to me. So I can rewrite the whole damn thing really fast when somebody has given me the breadcrumbs. And that is something I do find, like that type of automation. Now, automation in many other parts of the business, dude, I don't know. It's so complicated. I have one automated sequence in my entire business, and I used to have four. And why did I stop him, John? I got so many fucking complaints. Whoops, sorry, everybody. I got so many complaints.
I can tell you got no problem. I did a podcast this morning, and for some reason I had one of the most potty mouths I've had in a long while. I might not. I'm actually going to have to put on iTunes that it's for adults only, because it's definitely not child friendly. I don't know what was in me. Too much coffee in the morning, Rob. But it was a bit potty mouth, and I'm not normally like that, am I?
No, you're very rare. I am the one that takes that prize home on this show. That's for sure. I mean, 90%.
It was blue. It was blue.
I've heard you curse twice in like 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
It was blue. It was blue this morning's. We had a reasonably large live audience, and that's the other factor, folks. You're not joining us on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please join us go to the Mel Wright YouTube channel, go to the Mel Wright Facebook page, go to Robert's Inbound Facebook page. I'm sure you'll push that live.
I'll push it live since you're saying push it live.
And join us with your questions. Me and Robert would love to ask any questions during the show that you might have. Last thing before we call this a day, keep a do list. Well, I live by my lists. Because of my dyslexia mind, it's the way I keep it under control, is that my whole life is driven by do lists. Funny enough, I don't do it for my shopping. There are parts that I refuse but in general, when it comes to business and the things I'm going to do, I draw out lists, and I find it really useful. What about you, Rob?
Not so much, but I do have lists. I have a task list. I have through various times in my life, I've kept to-do lists, and I have found that the higher level, more creative things, like I have a very disciplined schedule as it relates to certain things, and those things are just things I do. I identify the healthiest, most productive part of my tasks, and I tackle them. I took that idea. There's a lot of ideas that I've taken from many different people. One of the latest and most recent is Tim Ferriss, because I operate more on the 4-day work week.
I can't stand him. I really honestly can't stand him. It's never done me any harm, but I'm not going to lie. I just can't stand the guy. And he's the reverse poster child of Gary Janick, whatever you pronounce his name. You know, the geezer that you reckon you should work 70 hours until you collapse. Well, this whole idea that you can build anything in just 4 hours is also a load of nonsense. But it's the storytelling, folks. It's having the right message that energizes the larger subconsciousness of your listeners. It's this linking the two things, and when it happens, something amazing happens. And that's the perfect example. You wrote that book at the right moment with the right message, and magic happened.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Ferriss is some kind of savant, and most people aren't. But he wants to pitch the story that you can be, and in some cases you can be. What I liked about his message is this: you spend your time where the love and joy is at. I agree with you. At some point, you got to make a deep investment. But once that deep investment, like if you become truly an expert at something, you can usually scale back your hours.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, anyway, to-do lists. I agree that most people need them. I have a priority list. It's not the same thing, but I understand where you're coming from. With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up the show. We really appreciate your attendance today. I agree with John. I have not been pushing out the show to my Facebook page. I put it in my Facebook group.
We love you to join us with your questions and be part of the conversation. We don't bite, do we, Rob?
No, we only have potty mouths. So we'll try to keep that to a limit. All right. John and I will. So, John, if you would like people to do some little research on you, where would they start?
I'll just go to the mel-wright.com website, have a look at what our latest posts are. Got a load of content, got all the podcasts. There's a load of stuff on the Mel Wright website. And then if you want to chat with me, you can just book a Zoom with me. And if you want, I can show you some of the great functionality of the Mel Wright system. Back over to you, Rob.
And as a reminder for all those people who are listening to the show that may not have heard me or John speak before, John is a WordPress maestro. And if you have an interest in using WordPress for your business, so you do allow ownership of the site. That's right?
Yep, they're all done in WordPress, and we will migrate it somewhere else if you want to leave us, and we'd be so sorry if you do decide.
All right, there you go. But the bottom line is that John does offer control. Ownership is a little bit weird on the language side, but basically it is ownership because you have complete control. So including taking it somewhere else. And that's something that I think is very important. So you should check John out because he creates amazing tools. He knows what he's doing. He's done it before. This is not his first time. Check him out. For me, I'm very, 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 very good at SEO, search engine optimization. And that is what I've done for 16 years now. And I've always done it for residential real estate. So if you're interested in learning more about that, or you're interested in learning more about me, you can go to inboundrem.com. That's inbound, INBOUNDREM.com. And you will also, just like John, find a lot of great content, a lot of how-tos, a lot of reviews, and a lot of information about me and our services. All right. Take us offline, sir.